Hey everyone, I wanted to make a quick screencast just to mention a few things about the class timeline now that we're getting started with it. Um, I think by and large, everyone seems to be off to a good start with the timeline. Before I delve into things, I did want to recognize that tiki-toki can be finicky, especially because we're all using let me get rid of that since we're all using the same account to create a timeline together. If you're trying to submit to the timeline and you keep getting logged out or something like that happens, make sure that you submit your work to Brightspace. You have to do that either way so that you get credit. And then you can maybe wait until the next day or wait a little while and then try again to add your work here on the course timeline. The bottom line is that I don't want this to be a source of stress in any way, shape, or form. I want it to be a place where we can see each other's work on identifying key figures, events, and issues in New Mexico's past. So if you have questions or need help with that or don't quite know what I'm talking about, let me know and I can say more about that. All right, so as I mentioned in my announcement for today, remember that one of the main things to think about as you create your timeline entry is historical significance. So I wanted to show you a couple of examples. This one on ancestral Puebloan disappearance is a good example of how to address historical significance without saying the historical significance of my topic is. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. You can do that. That's totally fine. That's kind of what I did in the example I provided for you. I gave you a couple of paragraphs where I told you all about the Bering Strait land bridge. So I told kind of the story about it. And then I had a paragraph where I explained its significance. And remember, the significance is addressing that question of, so what? Why should we need to understand this particular topic as we study New Mexico history? Why is it important? So it's where I'm not just kind of telling the story, but I'm injecting my own interpretation about why this thing is important. So a different example then is the one that Steve did here, where rather than, again, say the historical significance is, he's provided a few different examples from different sources, such as this 2008 New York Times article, and another article from 2019 that he talks about here. And then this last one, The House of Rain by Craig Childs, a book from 2006. What he does is Steve talks about different, more up-to-date debates that have been going on about how and why ancestral Puebloan sites were abandoned. So what this does then is it adds to the conversation that began in our textbook reading, and it takes it a step further. So it says, the textbook says there are different interpretations. It offers one. Here are some others and why those matter, why it matters that this debate is happening. And the ultimate kind of takeaway from this kind of entry is that by explaining the conclusions of different interpretations, this entry has added to our understanding of the significance of the disappearance of the Puebloan people and why there are continued debates about it. Okay, then the entry on Malintzin, Doña Marina, or Malinche, known by those various names. This is a great example of that more straightforward kind of historical significance that I mentioned. So the author of this post writes the story of, excuse me, but I kind of double clicked there when I didn't mean to. So in these paragraphs, they've explained the story of Malintzin, where she came from, being sold into slavery among the Maya, and so on. And then in this last paragraph, before the connection, they've addressed historical significance in specific detail. So of course, Malintzin's historical impacts, they are undeniable. I mean, she's one of those figures that's super disputed, discussed, debated, much like Oñate or some of those others that we've learned about in this unit. But it goes beyond just saying her impacts are undeniable, but it explains how and why, because of her translations and her ability to guide Cortez with the knowledge she had. She was able to help with the Spanish conquest of Tenochtitlan. In my feedback in Brightspace, I've asked some follow-up questions here just to get all of you thinking about your specific posts in more detail, things that maybe you didn't address fully. And again, don't worry about that. I'm just trying to get you and get us all to think more deeply as we study New Mexico history and to think about avenues for further study, further inquiry. Um, there's no way you'd be able to cover every last thing in a short timeline entry. So recognize that when I pose those questions, it's just to keep us thinking and keep pushing our study of the past forward. All right. There haven't actually been too many technical kinds of issues with the timeline thus far. Quite often, you'll see, such as this example in the trial and exile of Oñate, a thumbnail for an image that didn't display. When that happens, let's see, I'm going to go to the admin and find this entry here. I'm showing you how to edit this, but don't edit each other's work, please. It's okay to add your connection to your peer's post by just going to the extra info. This one's still in the works, so it's still being constructed. So no worry about that. But at the end of what's already been written, you can post your work, click save, but please don't change what others have already written. To show you what I'm talking about here, if you click media, we're going to click on the image, and I'm going to highlight the URL that's been used here and open it in a new tab. So I'm going to paste that here, and we're going to go online and see what this takes us to. All right, so here is a fandom site, Juan de Oñate. Okay, awesome cartoon image of Oñate. So what I think has happened here is that Elizabeth copied this URL instead of the URL for the image itself. So this URL is for the page. If you copy the one in the browser bar, to get the URL for the image itself, you need to right-click or control-click on a Mac and then choose Copy Image Address from the menu that pops up. If you are using Chrome, it'll say Copy Image Address. If you're using a different internet browser, the wording might be slightly different, but you want to click on whichever of these means you're going to copy the address for the image, however it's worded. So I'm going to click that. I'm going to go back over here to the timeline, and I'm going to try that. So I just pasted it into the source and clicked save. I'm going to try that one instead. Okay, so what we see here is now we have this, it's not just a white square, but it has that kind of generic image display. When I click more, oh, didn't work. All right, so some of these are problematic. If that's the case, don't worry too much. You can share your image in a different way if you want. You can always use that workaround of tweeting the image. So you can take a screenshot and tweet it. Then you can grab the URL for it. Bottom line, don't spend too much time trying to get an image if what just happened to me happens to you. If you've done the work and you found an image that I can go to like this, then that's more than fine. It's best if it displays here, but as I just showed you, that won't always be the case, even if you've done everything right. So if you have one of those, you can say, oops, I guess that's just one that doesn't work well, and you can move on. You don't need to sweat it. Again, this is intercession. We don't have a ton of time, and I don't want you to get hung up on trying to figure out how to get an image to display correctly. Next time around, you might just happen to find an image that will display correctly, and so no big deal. All right. The other thing to think about, I don't have an example of it on the timeline right now, but make sure that you get an image, especially if you are talking about a specific person. So we have Oñate, Esteban, Malintzin, Coronado, Geronimo, Billy the Kid. We have tons of historical figures all right here in our view. If you're looking for or if you're talking about a specific historical figure, make sure you find an image of that person. I've had it happen before where people share images of people that are different from the person that they are talking about. That can be tricky sometimes on the internet, especially in units 3 and 4, where we have figures that are sort of obscure unless you're talking about New Mexico history. So there aren't a lot of images available for them. If you find that you just can't find an image of the person that you want to, or that you're working on, you can instead just post an image of a New Mexico landscape or something kind of related to your topic. So again, you don't have to fret and try to figure out how to find an image of a person that there's no image for. Um, all right. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, I hope you're all having a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.